Thanks. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to be with you and talk to you about Cognos Workspace. We're going to do some slides to give you a grounding on what Workspace is, what the user interface is like, and then we're going to jump right over to my newly installed 10.2.1 environment, and we're going to use Workspace there. I'm going to show you one of the sample workspaces that come up and show you some of the features and functions. Then we'll create a real quick workshop on the Workspace on the fly, and then I'm hoping to have at least 10 minutes at the end of the session to take specific questions, so I can be sure to at least give it a shot to get at the specific things that you're interested in knowing about Workspace. Workspace is a web-based tool. It's part of your regular Cognos Business Intelligence Cognos Connection portal. It's how you would invoke it. So you sign on to the Cognos Connection and you can run a workspace that's been pre-built, or you can launch a workspace builder and build your own. It lets you reuse your library of Cognos reports. Also you will find as you start using Workspace, you're going to start building your own library of reports that are specifically designed to supply widgets, charts, crosstabs, maps, lists, to be consumed on a workspace, because how you write your reports actually makes a big difference in terms of how useful those objects in your reports are on a workspace. And if you've got specific questions about that, please send them in the way Jesse had suggested, through the chat or through the question and answer feature, and we can get into some of those specifics if that's of interest. It's intended to give you a display of the most important information for your business, because while we call them workspaces, a lot of folks find it valuable to think of them as dashboards. This is a collection of, usually but not always, summary data. So lots of times it's crosstabs and charts, maps, less so lists, but they're all supported, to give you at-a-glance information. You may, if you're coming from the Cognos 8 world, may have heard or may own something that's called Go Dashboard. Cognos Workspace is the successor product to Go Dashboard. So the Go Dashboard tool has not been migrated into Cognos 10. Instead, Cognos Workspace is part of 10, and there is an upgrade path. If you do have Go Dashboard dashboards, there is an upgrade path to convert those to workspaces. And the other important piece that I'll point out here, and that I will try to demonstrate for you, is this notion of personalization and collaboration. So personalization is about taking a chart, let's say, from a report, and then maybe that's a pie chart. The workspace will actually give you the ability to convert that chart to a bar chart, or to the tabular data behind the pie chart, or even just change the colors on the pie chart from the point of view of personalization. It actually doesn't change the report you copied the pie chart from. It just changes within that workspace the look and feel of that pie chart to personalize it to the needs of that workspace. So that's the notion of personalization. That also includes things like adding calculations to tabular data, sorting things differently, grouping things differently. That can all happen within a workspace without a developer license, right? The enhanced consumer license is not enabling you to become an author of a report from scratch. I apologize for that. It looks like it's working. I'm coming back. I have a screen issue here that you may have lost the video. I'm going to fix that now. And we're recording this, so we're clearly going to edit that out of the recording. So if you'll give me just a moment, I'm going to share a different desktop, not the one that's extended. And I am going to jump back to my slides. My apologies. So I have this notion of personalization. I also have this notion of collaboration. So collaboration on a Cognos workspace takes on two flavors. One is I can add comments on the workspace, and then anyone else who opens that workspace can read my comments, and it can add additional comments. So I can really sort of hold conversations, regardless of who's where, independent of having to be together, about what the BI is showing me on the workspace. Therefore, and I can attach it to the BI. Therefore, when I make changes in my business and my BI changes, right, I've got this history of, we talked about this, and look, now it's better. So that's one level of collaboration that you can do. The other level is that Workspace is integrated with another IBM product called Connections, specifically into the tasks portion of the Connections tool. And with that, I can actually create tasks in Connections from a workspace. And then the task lifecycle that's managed by Connections, right, allows me to manage the actual projects that my BI has spawned to help me improve business results and associate those projects, those tasks, to my workspace. So you can integrate with Connections, or you can use the comments, or you can use both. So that's this notion of personalization and collaboration. The Workspace interface is set up into three major zones. Over on the left, there's the zone called the global area. The global area is where you're going to put filters as well as navigation buttons that are going to be pervasive across the entire workspace. So the navigation buttons allow me to jump from tab to tab to tab. And filters that are over in the global area will filter widgets that live on multiple tabs. That's in contrast to filters that you might put in the center on a tab in the work area. Those filters would be private to that tab as opposed to global to all tabs. And so in the middle is the work area where you would put filters, where you would put images, you'd put web pages, but more often than not, you're putting reports or report parts. You see, Workspace is about reusing reports someone else has written. It's not about writing new reports. So you see on my screen here, I've got 4 widgets on there. I've got a map, an area chart, a bubble chart, and a list. Those were authored in a studio or in Cognos Workspace Advanced. They weren't authored on this workspace. Instead, I used the content pane, which is all the way on the right, to navigate to a report that had an interesting chart, expand the report, grab the chart, and drag it onto my workspace. And then I can personalize it from there. Okay, so Workspace depends on you having a library of interesting widgets that I would mix and match onto various workspaces. So that's the fundamental concept about how Workspace works. I have a library of reports that contain objects that I can mix and match onto a workspace. And then I can add filters to my workspace so that I can filter those widgets in addition to any filters that were embedded in the reports that I pulled them from. So that content pane not only gives me access to the reports that are available to me out on the public folder as well as in my own My Folders, also gives me access to a toolbox. So on the content side, I can look through the public folder and My Folders. I get various views. I can look at it in tree, thumbnail, or list. But the notion here is I'm going there after reports, report parts that I can drag onto my workspace. And those can be done in Query Studio or Analysis Studio or Report Studio or CWA. They could be sourced from TM1. They could be sourced from Power Cubes. They could be sourced from Relational Database. And on a workspace, I can mix and match from reports sourced from any data sources. I'm not limited to saying, okay, on this tab I have to have all Oracle data, or on this tab I have to have all TM1 data. I can mix and match as needed, and I do that through the Content tab. The widgets could be reports and report parts. I can grab PowerPlay reports that were written with the PowerPlay Studio, if I happen to own that. I can drag a navigator on, so I can actually include the navigator on the workspace itself. And like I said, I can actually grab TM1 web sheets and make my workspace part of my contributor functionality as I work with TM1. The toolbox allows me to add other things that don't come, let's say, directly from reports, like those action buttons I talked about that help me navigate in the global area. I can drag an image on and display my company logo in the upper left, let's say, of every dashboard. I can access the 2 types of filters that are supported within Workspace, a value filter and a slider filter. And let's say I even put web pages on. So if I would like to have my portal live in a frame on a workspace on one of the tabs, I can do that as well. I'll illustrate some of these tools when I get to my demo. Every widget gets an action menu of some kind. Usually it's a big blue button in the upper left of the widget when you select the widget. And that gives you a collection of actions, including exporting that widget to a PDF or Excel or a CSV so that you could leverage the contents of that widget external to the workspace. The export, if you happen to have annotated your widget, you added comments to the widget, those comments are part of the export. So when you export it, you're not losing the context, the collaboration that you did with that widget. The whole workspace has a big blue action button as well, where you can go to manage your tabs on the workspace. You can manage preferences for the workspace. You can also launch any of the Cognos tools from the workspace action menu. You get the same launch menu there that you get on the Cognos connection today when you log in. That's also where you would go to email a link to this workspace, so you can email a link to people so you can direct them to click on the link, go to the web space, the workspace, and log in. What you don't see on the action menu for the workspace is an entry called print. And that's because the way that Cognos has implemented workspaces, I actually use my browser print functionality to print my workspace. So I would actually go to the browser file menu, choose print there, and use the browser to print my workspace. So I can print to PDF an individual widget using the action menu, but to print my workspace, I use my IE or Firefox browser print capability. Let's go look at this thing and actually use it. So I've got open here one of the workspaces that comes out of the box. I'm going to adjust the magnification on here so you can see more of it. No, I guess that's not going to work. Let's try this. How about I at least remove my ribbon, I think. Is that F12? F11? I guess it was F11. All right, there you go. So you can see a bit more of my workspace. So over here on the left is my global area. On this particular workspace, it actually doesn't include anything. Over here on the right is my content area. And in the content area, I'm going to have those two tabs. I'm going to have my content tab and my toolbox tab. Let's first explore the middle area, though, and let's look at these widgets. So here is a collection of 4 widgets. These were pulled in from a report. Each of the widgets is now available to be personalized. So when I click on a widget, I get a context menu up here at the top. I see that I could change the palette. You know, it's funny to say, yeah, you can change the palette and that's personalization. Turns out that, you know, a lot of requests that we get from clients is, could you change the colors? So now we don't have to worry about doing that in the report. We can have our customers drag it onto a workspace and change the colors there. But the more interesting one is this. This is the ability to change what I'm seeing, the display type of the data. So I won't be able to change the data here, but I can just change how it's displayed. For example, if I want to change this from a bar chart to a column chart or from a bar chart to a line chart, I can do that simply by clicking on it. What's displayed here is what Cognos would consider the recommended views for the data. So you see, for example, here it doesn't show a crosstab. Okay, and that's because the first 5 views that Cognos recommends by analyzing the data that's being shown in the widget are from top to bottom. It thinks column chart's the best, gauge chart is the 5th best. More here will let me access all of the different views I could have of this data, and as I cycle through, it even gives me variance here, and it gives me why Cognos thought that that was the best view. And they're still listed highest to lowest here. So while I could go tabular, and I could go tabular in a crosstab or tabular in a table, okay, Cognos thinks that that is far down the list of the best ways to show the data that's in the widget. So this recommender was introduced in 10.2. It's been improved in 10.2.1, especially the why part, okay? The recommendations for why in this particular place are not particularly robust, but they used to be basically one sentence, and it wasn't necessarily a good sentence about why that might be the right way to display the data. So the right way to display the data, recommended because stuff, is far more robust in this release. For all that I can't show it to you on this particular one. Well, here's one. So chart markers make the data point. So you want to do a line chart and you want the markers because the markers make the data clearer and the data is clearer in a chart without depth. In other words, you don't want a 3D chart here. So that's one of the newer things that's in 10.2.1 is this recommender is even better than it was in 10.2.0. All right, so I can go ahead and convert this to a crosstab if that's what I want. But the notion here is that I'm trying to enable, and see, it's not a particularly interesting crosstab, that's why it wasn't recommended. I'm trying to enable my end users to be able to personalize things and not so much focus as author reports on the look and feel. I want a good one to start with, don't get me wrong. But what I really want to focus on is getting the right data in front of people and let them pick the visualization that makes the most sense for them. Okay. Another notion of personalization here, I'll show you that annotation. I'm going to right-click on that cell, and I'm going to choose comment. And on a tabular view, that would be a crosstab or a list. I can click on a cell in the crosstab or the list, and I can add a comment on that cell. It'll copy the data in, which is really important, right, because tomorrow this will be a different number. And if I say this number is too low, and I don't have the number in the comment, tomorrow when I look and it's double this number, because we did all kinds of great things today to sell a bunch of stuff, the context for that comment won't be there. So while I could delete it, all right, it's not going to keep me from actually deleting this text. The fact that it copies it in is a nice time saver, and it does provide context for my comment. Once I've annotated a cell, you see it gets a little red item in the corner, and if I hover over it, I see the comment. There's only one comment on this cell in this workspace right now, but if I had 5, it would actually show me the whole conversation, newest comment to oldest comment in this window, and it would scroll if it needs to. Every widget, whether it's tabular or not, will also allow me to add a comment to the widget. And the comment on the widget we'll add the name of the widget to the comment, and then I could put my comment in. And now you'll see that my widget gets a red mark in the corner that says that there's a comment on the widget. So now I have on tabular data both a comment on cells, comment on widget. I'm often asked, Rich, is this associated with this position in the cell? How does Cognos know, really what I've commented on? And what it's doing is it's actually associating the comment to the coordinates in the crosstab. So it's going to be for the revenue in Brazil. If you add a filter and Brazil goes away, it won't show it, but the comment will come right back as soon as I change the filter and Brazil comes back. So it's not associated with third row down. It's associated with Brazil. Okay, so it does keep track of the comments on the tabular data in terms of, if you will, a meaningful coordinate and not just some sort of positional notation. So that's sort of a notion here of personalization. Crosstabs, swapping rows and columns. Charts, when I swap rows and columns, I'm really swapping categories and series. For those of you who are authors, you understand what I mean by that. Down here, I've got a pie chart. I'm not sure that a pie chart is the best way to look at it. Cognos agrees. It thinks it's a column chart. If I don't click on the menu button next to the recommender, I just click on the button, it'll convert it to the first one that Cognos thinks is best. So now I've got a personalized workspace. If I save this workspace and I save it in the public folders, other people will come in, they will see it personalized like this. If I save it in my folders, I can't share it with anybody, right? But I can use it myself. If I don't save it, the next person that opens the workspace will see the comments, but won't see the personalizations, the other personalizations I made. Comments do not depend on you saving the workspace. Comments are there and saved as soon as you click OK. Now, let me show you how to build a workspace instead of showing you how to use one. I'm going to minimize this window and open up another window here. So this is the welcome screen on Cognos 10.2.1. All of you who are on 10.2 or 8 are saying, ooh, they changed that. Yeah, they did. The look and feel on Cognos 10.2.1 is a bit different. Not so much that you won't be able to immediately use the tool, but it's different. They've sort of upgraded the look and feel of the tool. I'm going to go ahead and choose Create a Workspace on the web, which is the Cognos Workspace invoker off of the Welcome menu, and I'm going to start with an empty workspace. On the Workspace Welcome menu, there's the option to create new or open existing. This is also an option where you could make one or more workspaces your quote-unquote favorite workspaces, and they'll show up down here in the lower left. and you'll be able to click on your favorite workspaces right from here. So if they're stored 5 levels deep in the public folders, you can just get at them very quickly by making them favorite, and they'll show up here in your list of favorites. Also over here are links to how-to videos that are hosted on the IBM website. So these are not things that come when you install and then grow old as the videos get better. You are always pointing to the live version of the videos on the IBM site. Therefore, you're always going to get the most improved, most enhanced, most current how-to videos. But again, the notion here is putting power into the hands of your consumers, and basically reducing the load on your centralized resources from having to do some of the education steps, some of the building of dashboard steps, right? With Workspace, I'm not in the business anymore of centrally managing every possible combination of interesting widgets and storing them in the public folders. I'm giving you a library of widgets and putting that in the hands of people to assemble in ways that are meaningful to them. Here I'm putting the power to learn about Workspace in the hands of the end users and not necessarily having to centrally manage the education task. But enough about that. Let's create us a new workspace. So I am going to first put a couple of tools on just to show you the tools. I'm going to grab an image widget, drop it on. I happen to have a URL because I don't want to spend time typing, but I will drop into this. I'm going to size my widget, and if you click on my widget, I'm going to launch the LPA website, and I'm going to drop that on my dashboard. It's awful big, but that's okay. They give me a quick way to resize it so that it fits content, and there you go. Now, I can click on this all day, and I'm not going to see the LPA website, and the reason is because one of the properties that is set by default is that it's going to broadcast that website to anyone who's listening for websites on this workspace. If I wanted it to launch in a different window, I would have had to set that when I just did that, create my image. Instead, though, I'm going to throw a web page widget on just so now you can say you've seen 2 toolbox items in action. The default website I want this web page to play is Amazon.com, and I'm only doing it that way so that I can show you, A, you can put any website in there that allows itself to be displayed in frames, and B, now when I click on this logo, it's going to broadcast the LPA.com to any listening widget that cares about HTTP and website URLs, and that's what web pages do by default. So there you go. So that's how there is inter-widget communication, and these 2 widgets is rather simple. Images can broadcast a URL. Web pages can receive URLs and display them when they do receive it. That's something you can turn on and off. I just wanted to illustrate this notion of communication here. I'll come back to filters in a minute. First, I want to put some data on here that I might actually want to filter. So I'm going to go up to content, and I'm going to navigate to some reports that were written. And these reports were actually written specifically to be widgets on workspaces, because there are techniques you're going to want to use in your report writing if you intend your report to source widgets for Workspace. So out in the samples under Go Data Warehouse, there is going to be Cognos Workspace source reports folders under both Warehouse Query and Warehouse Analysis. I'm going to use the ones in Query. I'm going to grab some data about revenue. I'm going to first grab revenue by country and drag that on to my workspace. Let me maximize this, give myself a little more room. I'm also going to grab some revenue by order method and drop that onto my workspace. And you see here, everything starts off with 1 tab. Workspaces are tabbed naturally. I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to name this tab revenue. I'm going to add another tab to my workspace, and I'll go ahead and name this tab campaigns, because I have some campaign data up here under promotions, and I'm also interested on this workspace of being able to show the success of the campaigns that are running. Okay, so very quickly now I have some at-a-glance information about revenue, and I have some at-a-glance information about campaigns. These gauge charts are not appealing to me. I'm going to go ahead and convert those to a column chart. I just think that I'm much happier with a column chart there. Okay. Now, this is all good, and I'm seeing data here, but I want some more control over the data I'm seeing. For example, there's a lot of countries here, and I'm not sure I want to look at all these countries. There's only a few countries I'm interested in looking at today. So, under normal circumstances, I would call my friendly developer, hey developer, could you write me a report that limits the data to just the 3 countries I'm interested in? In Workspace, I don't have to do that. I can go to my toolbox, and I can grab me a filter tool. So I'm going to grab a select value filter and add it to this page. I'll drop it here. I get a wizard. It's telling me, okay, based on the widgets that are on this page, those widgets are filterable by either country or order method. And oh, by the by, if you filter by country, this one widget will change. If you filter by order method, this one widget will change. In other words, there are no filterable fields that are in common to both widgets. So, okay, the only one I really cared to filter was this one by country. I'm going to pick country. There's all the countries that will show up in the widget, and I want to preserve the right to filter by any country, so I'm going to leave all those selected. I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And now, if I want, I can just look at the 2 or 3 countries that I'm really interested in, and you'll notice that my widget has updated. You'll also notice, though, that my layout's not awesome. I'm just going to go ahead and use one of the auto layout features, which will apparently error out for a second there. Sorry about that. Live demo. You never know what's going to happen. I'm going to rearrange this widget just a smidge. So there we go. And there you are. So that is, now I've got this. Oh, that's interesting. Let me do the fit content, because that, I think, is, yeah, that's a little better. Okay, so there is some auto layout helpers here as well. But as you can see, I can drag and drop stuff, and arrange it any way that suits me. I could resize this, for example, and when I do, I'll get a scroll bar on it, which is perfectly fine with me. So I'm happy enough to do that and leave it with a scroll bar. And so there's that. Now, I have campaigns over here, and I could certainly add a filter over here as well. And you see, it will tell me that the campaign name is available to filter on, and that if I do filter on it, both widgets are going to get updated. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. I'm going to add some additional content to my first tab to illustrate this notion of the global area. So let me grab from my campaign. Actually, no, I'll do this backwards. I'm going to go here and I'm going to add some revenue data, just because I want you to see how this global area works. So I'm going to do revenue and sales targets, okay, and drop it on this this tab. And I'm going to expand my global area, and I'm going to drag a filter to my global area. So this filter that I drop over here, this is going to be able to filter items on all of my tabs. That's why it's in the global area versus on a tab, And you see, now my dialog is showing me the data available across all of my tabs that I could put a filter on over here. So I'm going to go ahead and filter on order method type. No, yeah, I'll do it on order method type over here. And so there's my order method types. Okay. Now, oh, that's gone. That's funny that showed up there. I was going to point that out in a second, but there you go. The demo is actually getting ahead of me. Let me maximize a little. Okay, and I'm going to collapse that and talk about this. So this filter, when I change this filter and apply it here, any widgets on this tab and any widgets on this tab will automatically be filtered by that, because this widget is broadcasting the selections I've made. And by default, these widgets are listening for anything broadcast from the global tab. You can control that. Listen for widget events will allow me for any widget for me to turn on or off what broadcast it's listening to. And there's a three types of broadcasts that it can listen to. It can certainly listen to filters broadcasting information about selections. It can also listen for parameters from prompts that I've dragged in from reports, but I think more interestingly, it can also listen to drill up, drill down. So if I have two widgets and they're both from the same cube and they both share a dimension on the widget, and I drill down on one widget, it will actually automatically drill down the other widget to the same level, keeping my widgets in sync. If I don't want that, I can come in and turn off on listening for the broadcast of a drill down or a drill up, but by default, it's going to keep drill downs and drill ups in sync. Okay, so that's your quick, and I apologize, it is quick, intro to functionality on Cognos Workspace. So what I'm going to do quickly is just walk you through a couple other things. We talked about annotations. We talked about exports. We talked about the fact that you print from the browser. We talked about connections. So connections, separate product. Turns out that if you have an admin license for IBM Cognos, you have a license to install the tasks portion of connections. It used to be called Lotus Connections, so you might find stuff online about Lotus Connections rather than IBM Connections, but it's the same product. So the task portion of Connections is available to you to install, and then when you install it, you can configure your BI to know about it, and then you'll be able to integrate your workspace with Connections. Let's talk a bit about security, because security is always something we have to keep in mind as we deploy new things. When we deploy Cognos Workspace, you have to be enhanced consumer license level or above to get it at all. So what I'm about to tell you now isn't about whether you get Workspace or not. That's about your license level, and that's a different thing. What I'm talking about now is once you have access to Workspace, you have three different types of access you could be granted by your administrator. The lowest level of access for a workspace is called consumer. So it's not about being a consumer at the license level, which is an unfortunate reuse of the same word consumer. This is about consuming a workspace. So you have enhanced consumer license or more, you can get to workspace. Now, what can I do with a workspace? Well, I can use the workspace but not change it. That's the lowest level of access I can give you. That's a nice thing to have when you've got workspaces that you want folks to use, but you don't want them to change it and save it, and let everybody see the changed one, because you want to control the experience on that workspace. So you want to give users of those workspaces just the consume access to Cognos Workspace. Sort of middle of the road, I can do a bunch of things, like I can personalize, I can add comments, I can basically look modified but not add to or delete from a workspace. That's what this interact middle of the road level of access gives you. So you could grant certain of your users this interact level of use of workspaces and give them a bit more flexibility, but still not give them all of the powers that you would give the next level of group, which is called assemble. So everything I was just doing about adding new widgets to a workspace and personalizing them and changing inter-widget communication, that is all assemble level functionality. Right? Interactors use workspaces that were already written, but they can do a bunch of personalization on them. Consumers use workspaces that are already assembled, but they can do very little but use them. They'll still be able to drill up and drill down. They'll still be able to execute drill throughs, which also work on workspaces. But they won't be able to make changes. Interactors can change them, but they can't add and remove widgets. Assemblers can add and remove widgets, create new workspaces. And so you've got these three levels of access that will give you control over how your users who have access to Cognos Workspace in the first place interact with Cognos Workspace. Okay, so at that, how'd I do on time? It is 12, wow, exactly what I targeted, 12:45. The last time I gave this webinar, we ended up with so many questions we went 10 minutes over. So I sped up the recording just a little bit to get through everything in the demo to get to this point so we'd have more time for questions. So please, Jesse, can you tell me?
Sure. So the first question is around rows and columns being frozen in Cognos Workspace. So this came up when we were showing the crosstab.
Sure.
Can rows and columns be frozen?
Absolutely. So let me do this. Let me convert this guy to a crosstab. And in tabular data, both in lists and in crosstabs, both, I can do a freeze column headings and lists and crosstabs. In addition, I can do freeze row headings in a crosstab. So you right-click on the row, freeze row headings, freeze column headings. The only freeze column headings would be there at this row list, but I could do one or the other or both. Let me go ahead and do both. And if I have my widget big enough, it doesn't matter. If I have my widget smaller, as I scroll and scroll, it will. Okay, so freeze is absolutely available on tabular data in your workspace. I'm going to go ahead and fix that. Next question, please.
The next question is just on mobile and the delivery mechanism to mobile. So how is a workspace consumed on a mobile device?
Okay, two ways to consume a workspace on a mobile device. On the iPad, the Cognos downloadable from the Apple Store iPad application will allow you to navigate to public folders, grab a workspace, run it, and it'll display it right in the native app. The only other way to consume workspaces is through a browser, and of course there are various browsers on various mobile devices, and there are certain supported browsers and certain supported versions of browsers. You can display a workspace in IE with 10.2.1. IE 10 is supported. With 10.2, IE 9 is supported, and 10 is supported only in compatibility mode. But in 10.2.1, 10 is supported natively. Firefox 17 is what they're showing for both 10.2 and 10.2.1 as a supported browser. Safari 6 is a supported browser for consumption. The Safari, Chrome actually displays them. The difference with Safari and Chrome is the level of interactivity that you can do, the level of personalization you can do. So what I generally tell folks is IE and Firefox are the two browser accesses to workspaces that are going to give you the most functionality.
Okay. And the name, there's a couple questions on the name of the Cognos mobile app. So if you search for IBM Cognos in the App Store, that should get you to the specific iPad app.
Yeah.
And I can send a follow-up with a direct link to that in the App Store.
And just so you know, you can install the iPad app, and it actually comes with a bunch of samples, especially active report samples. And the current one includes a bunch that leverage the Rave engine, the new visualization engine that's part of 10.2.1 active reports. For you to connect that iPad app to your Cognos backend environment, you have to be able to access it. So if you're outside your company network and you don't have a way to access your Cognos over the web, you have to use a VPN to do it. And then B, you have to have Cognos mobile server components installed in your IBM Cognos environment. So you can't use the iPad app to connect to your Cognos until and unless you've installed the mobile server pieces as well. Download the app on your iPad, and without connecting to anything, you'll get a whole bunch of sample active reports to look at on the iPad, which is actually very worthwhile doing.
All right, there's a couple questions on performance, and Megan, Chris, and a couple other people have questions, and I'll try to summarize those. Just seems like this is doing a lot more than run a regular report. What's the performance impact, and how do you plan for that?
Well, you know, it's interesting. As you might have saw, I grab a widget, it starts doing its little run. I can continue to grab widgets and throw them on. When I open a workspace, 3, 4, 5, 6 widgets may fire off, and each of those is an individual report request. So I now, instead of running one report and creating one report request because I ran it, I'm now, when I open a workspace, creating 4. If I have 4 widgets on a dashboard, 4 report requests. And so you absolutely will see an impact. If your server is sized for, to handle 20 simultaneous report requests at a time, and you've got those folks now opening workspaces, the workspaces will queue up. So it really depends on throughput. As much as anything else, right? Because a queued request that is queued for a microsecond isn't going to cause anybody any concern. You know, the widgets run independently. When they finish, they display their results, so there's no wait for them all to finish kind of problem that you used to have with the Cognos Connection pages. But yes, there will be an additional load. So far, in my experience out in the field, I have not found that the load is so much bigger that people are talking server upgrade. What they're finding is that requests get queued, more BI bus processes launch in Windows Task Manager if you're looking, but the requests get queued, serviced, and the results get returned in good order. Now, what I will tell you I've noticed, and I've only had Cognos 10.2.1 since Tuesday, just like you guys, right? I didn't get it early. What I will tell you is that I am finding that the workspace performance on the very same class and size of servers, same memory, same CPUs, same everything, there is an appreciable difference in the performance of Workspace on 10.2.1. It is much, the improvement is very noticeable that 10.2.1 is faster. So that's real good news in my opinion.
And in the webinar next Friday on 10.2.1, we'll cover some of the performance benchmarks that IBM has shared about the release. So, okay, great. All right, the next question, Rich, is a generic question of how does a user launch a workspace?
Okay, a couple of ways. Let me actually get out of this workspace and let me get back to the Cognos connection. So when I log in to Cognos, you may or may not have your users getting the welcome screen, but certainly on the welcome screen, I can open my workspaces by clicking on my workspaces.
Well, while you're here, there's another question on the welcome screen. Someone said, on the welcome screen, I noticed a create workspace on your computer menu item. What is that?
That is the ability to download and install IBM Cognos Insight, the desktop VI for one standalone product that was introduced with Cognos 10. So Cognos 10 introduced Cognos Insight. You can install a component on your server that would allow your users to do the download from the welcome screen, which is what this is for. So if I click on this, it's going to download software, install it, and let me create workspaces locally, as opposed to using IBM Cognos Workspace on my enterprise.
And if you want to learn more about Cognos Insight, analyticszone.com, that's IBM's dedicated site for Cognos Insight. It's a great place to have resources. We'll likely have a webinar on Cognos Insight in the coming month.
Right. So if I click on my workspaces here, that's one way for me to get at the workspaces that I can get to. And it launches you in here. And you would use the navigator here to open your workspaces. So I will go to the samples, and there are workspace samples here, and I can open a workspace from here. So that's one way to open workspaces off of the welcome menu. Another way to open a workspace is in your Cognos connection. You can navigate in the Cognos connection to where your workspaces are stored, and you can click on one and run it there. Now, it turns out that if there's a workspace that I always want to be the workspace that launches when I log in, I can actually create this workspace as my home view. So when I log into Cognos and I say on the welcome screen, or if I don't have the welcome screen, it defaults to jumping to my home. This workspace could be my home now. And so, and as you can see, you know, I can launch from here pretty much anything, right? I can get to anywhere. I can launch the connection to go and run reports outside a workspace. I can launch any of the tools to which I'm entitled from here. So this is actually a very effective landing page concept where I get the data that I'm most interested in. That's why I made it my home, plus the ability to launch to anywhere else I need to.
Okay, next question, just the data that you're entering in Cognos Workspace, where does that end up? So where's that being stored?
Data that I enter, you mean like my comments?
Based on the timing of this, I would assume it was comments, filter values,
okay,
and the default values. And
okay, so the everything that I'm doing in these workspaces that is going to be stored in the content store, just like any report you write is, any report that you run and save to the portal is stored there. So it's all stored centrally. Nothing's stored on my PC when I'm using Cognos Workspace. From the point of view of the comments, there are new tables in the centralized content store database where the comments are all stored. That was added to the tool when they added Workspace. So those are stored in the table in a database. The personalizations are actually stored in the Workspace. So think of the Workspace as a sandbox, as a container. And when I drag a widget from a report to the container, it makes a copy of the widget and drops it into this sandbox. And then anything I do with that widget, like change the look and feel, change the colors, add a calculated column, sort it differently, swap its rows and columns, all of those personalizations that I do to make that widget better suited to what I'm doing, when I save the workspace, all of those personalizations are saved as part of the workspace. They're not saved into any other workspace. They're not saved back to the source report. So the workspace itself is the object in which all of those instructions for the look and feel of my widget are saved.
Okay, great. There's a quick question on Cognos Insight and the licensing. If you're an advanced business author, user level or higher, you're entitled to use Cognos Insight. So if you have an admin, for example, you at least have one person that is entitled to do that. But advanced business authors is the level where you get Cognos Insight.
I will just say this, out on the analyticszone.com, you can download a free version of Cognos Insight. It is limited in that it can't connect to your enterprise databases. It will only work with spreadsheets on your PC, but it is otherwise a fully functioning version of Insight. So if you wanted to test it, play with it, give it to a couple of users and say, give it a shot before you license them, the free version is downloadable and available for you there.
All right. Now we have a surprising number of questions on comments.
Okay, good.
So,
comments are cool.
All right. So the first question is, what level of access grants the ability to write comments?
Gosh. Yeah, see, now you got to ask, does Rich have this memorized? Move on while I open a document. Boy, you guys are going to get a little bit extra of our class documentation. Let's see here. When I consume, I can add comments.
Okay, so consumer level can add comments.
Yeah. So if you're interested in that, yeah. So once you get access to Workspace. So once your administrator gives you access to Workspace, which is, by the way, all you administrators out there, you give it through the capability called Executive Dashboard. Once you get that capability as a user, then the lowest level of access, consume, will let you be able to add comments, use the collaboration if you've got connections installed, export widgets, stuff like that.
All right. Next comment question is how do you get rid of them? How can an admin get rid of comments?
Admins cannot get rid of comments.
Right.
Only the comment authors can get rid of comments. And you can only get rid of comments in reverse order. So let's say, Jesse, you entered a comment. And then you entered a second comment. You could delete the second comment, and then you would actually even be able to delete the first comment. Let's say, though, you entered a comment, and then I entered a comment. You would not only be unable to delete my comment, you would also be unable to delete your comment because my comment's in the way.
All right. Is it true that you can only put a comment on a table and not on graphs?
You can put a comment on a chart from the point of view of this chart here. I can annotate the widget, not the individual chart. So my bar chart, I can't take a column in a bar chart, right-click on it, and say add a comment. I can only do the very specific commenting in tabular data, crosstabs and tables. But in charts, I can annotate the widget, which displays the chart, right?
All right. Do you have a drill down you could show? Do you have something accessible?
Yeah, let me actually open a workspace. I don't know that I know a workspace that'll do that. Let me just create a new one and give you that. What I'll do, and you can do this too, right? I'm using the samples that are out there. I don't know why I saved that. Let me do a new, and let me go out to the public folders. In the samples area, or samples DQ, it's in both. Under Cognos Go Data Warehouse Analysis, there is a folder full of workspace source reports. These are all based on drillable data. So I'm pretty sure if I go into sales here and I do a sales target list, a gross profit chart, and the revenue by product line chart, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, see, they're not sharing a dimension, so I can't show you the synchronization there. Give me a second. You know, live demo. What you gonna do? Well, from a drilling perspective, I can drill down on camping equipment. So I double-clicked on camping equipment here, and it's going to rerun this this chart and display it now for the product lines in camping equipment. If I double-click here on, there you go. So there's my camping equipment drill down there, right? And I can do a drill up. What I was hoping to show you was being able to drill and have multiple things change. The synchronization, you know, because of the broadcasting. But I don't want to spend more time versus answer more questions there. So ask away. What's next?
All right, active reports, the use of active reports with Cognos Workspace. So can you
absolutely support it?
Okay. So.
Yeah, so the only trick with using an active report on Workspace is you can't drag an active report on and have it run and grab data at that time on the Workspace. Instead, you have to pre-run the active report, store the active report output on the portal, and then when your user drags in the active report, it'll display the saved output. If they drag in an active report that has no saved outputs, it'll add the widget, and the widget will display an error message that says that you can't run an active report live within a workspace. But if since active reports are a copy of the data and they're static and they're not something that you really, in my experience so far, run live, you run them at a prescribed time and store off the data, I don't think that that's a huge limitation. So if you schedule your active reports to run and save to the portal, your users can drag them on. And when you drag on any saved output, it doesn't matter if it's an active report or a regular report that's got saved output. When you drag on a saved output, you get to actually control which version you're seeing. So there is a versions entry here. These are running live. Anytime I grab a piece of a report, it always runs live. When I grab a whole report, I can pick which version I'm looking at in the workspace. With an active report, it must be a saved version that I look at. All right. I know we're going overtime, guys, and I'm willing to continue for another 10 minutes answering questions, but I know that some folks have to get off. If you do have to get off, let me just say thank you very much for joining us today. And any other questions I answer while we're live here will be in the recording, so you can fast forward to the last 10 minutes and hear other questions and answers. So,
okay. So one question received was on the web page interaction that you showed initially.
Yeah.
So can you walk through the web page interaction quickly one more time?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
At time, I think it took about 1 minute when we did.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So I went to my toolbox, and the web page tool is a pretty simple one. It's a frame. Tell me what to display. Now, some things won't let you display in a frame. Google will not allow you to display it in a frame. I thought it'd be great to put Google on my workspace. So it turns out Google has prevented that because they will not let you display their content in a frame. So that's unfortunate, but there you go. So I'm going to use a web page that I know displays, Amazon.com. Okay. So that's what a web page widget does in and of itself. It only becomes more interesting when I put on a tool that broadcasts a URL, and that's what the image guy did. So I'm going to grab my image and drag it on, and I'm going to throw up the image I want to display. Again, I'm not going to type it. I'm just going to drop in the URL for the image. I do know it's too big. So I'm going to make it smaller. Now, at this point, I don't have to have the widget broadcast anything. The image could just be an image. But you could do a URL if you click on it. So I'm going to put in LPAs. Now you see, when I click on this widget, I can tell it, all right, where do you want me to open the web page? Do you want me to just broadcast it, and any widgets listening for URLs will react? Or do you want to just open it in a new window? I don't have to broadcast it. I'm going to leave it to broadcast and click OK. So now I've got a widget that's got an image, and I've got a widget that is a web page. And by default, this guy is set to listen for URLs broadcast from the image. So when I click on the image and broadcast lpa.com, the web page receives it and reacts to it.
Great. Thanks, Rich. All right.
Other questions?
The next question is about just the life cycle of a report on a widget. So when does a report become a widget? Can you talk through that again?
Sure. So the whole concept behind Cognos Workspace is that I have a library of reports that contain interesting things to help me understand my business. Now, that should be something you build on purpose, right? And the reason I say that is because when I write reports that I know are going to be consumed on Cognos Workspace, I'm actually going to write them in a slightly different way. First of all, I'm going to name everything in the report, because what I don't want to show up are the default names in a report. When I add a chart to my report, it's going to be called something like Chart 1. When I add a list to my report, it's going to be called List 1. Well, how is my user going to know what List 1 has when they go exploring in the content pane? So there's things I want to do so that my list here is called bonus list, not list 1. So that's one of the kinds of changes when I author a report. But when I author a report, it's not a widget. When I author a report, it becomes potentially a source for widgets. What could be sourced from a report? Well, any named object I put in the report. So any crosstab, any chart, any map, any list could become a widget. And when I go to a navigator and expand a report, okay, and it could be any old report that's been written. It doesn't have to have been written specifically for workspace consumption. Any piece of that report or the entire report itself can be dragged onto a workspace. When it's in the content pane, it is simply a source for a widget. As soon as I drag it into a workspace, now this item here, this guy, is a widget. Didn't change the status of this guy. This guy is a potential widget over here on the right. The guy that's in my report, it's a widget. And it now lives in the sandbox of this workspace. And anything I do to it here has no impact on where I dragged it from. And by the way, when this report that I dragged it from changes, I'll get a notification up in the corner of the widget that tells me there's a new version available that I can copy in. And there's a utility that my administrator can run so that I can actually go and update all the widgets that come from source reports that have been modified, so I don't have to have my end users manage refreshing those widgets.
Okay. All right. And Rich, we got a question from Winnie on 10.2.1. What else gets improved with this release? And I think that's a great lead into our next webinar.
Well, I'll talk
and
about
a good
advertising.
point.
Okay.
You,
all right.
You want to
get
3 or 4 bullets to get people excited?
Sure. So 10.2.1 has a number of performance improvements that I guess are pervasive across the board, and a number of bug fixes between 10.2.0 and 10.2.1. So those are sort of, givens, right? Cognos is always working to improve performance. They're always working to correct any known bugs and get them out. The other big things that are part of this release are great improvements to managing multi-tenancy. In 10.2, they introduced multi-tenancy. In 10.2.1, there's now a tab dedicated to managing multi-tenancy in your environment on the administration screen. In 10.2, they introduced dynamic cubes. In this release, they have improved both the functionality of dynamic cubes, their efficiency on how they use memory, as well as giving you, yes, you guessed it, another tab that helps you manage in the administration side. The other thing they've given you, relative to active reports are a great BI standalone tool where I can walk away, be disconnected, but still interact with my enterprise data. The problem with them has been sort of twofold. One, they are sometimes very large because I want to get a lot of data into them. And part of the reason they were large is the amount of data I put in them, certainly. But part of the reason they were large is because of how they were built. So Cognos spent a whole bunch of time compressing active reports and making those files, and generally speaking, smaller. In addition, for active reports, Cognos has rolled out for the first time what they're calling their RAVE engine. So RAVE allows me to use a new tool in the Report Studio toolbox for active reports, and active reports only at this point, but it will become for other reports soon. But for active reports only now, there's a tool in the toolbox in Report Studio I can drag onto an active report called a visualization. And visualizations are new ways to look at data. You can think of them as charts that other people have written. So Cognos' library of charts, still there, still works. Far less space used up when you add charts to an active report. Independent of visualizations, they have completely changed how charts work in an active report. But on top of that, they now give you visualizations, which can allow you to add heat maps. They can allow you to add tree charts. They can allow you to add, what's another one? There's a whole bevy of visualizations you can download from the Analytics Zone. And these are now part of active reports, and they will soon be part of regular reports. And the deal with those is not only is this library that you can download and leverage, they're going to be 6 months-ish is what they're saying, but they won't promise a specific date. But in 6 months or so, they'll make available a visualization designer tool so that you can create your own visualization designs and add them to this RAVE engine, so you can add those visualizations to your reports. So I think the RAVE engine is really going to give us a real boost in being able to cleverly display business